So we're going to talk about the precise relationship between Buddhism and Shinto in class. But for now, just to wrap up today's online lecture, I want to say something about some of the popular traditions. Feel free to click any of the links to find out a little bit more about them. Over here you have an image of the 7 gods of good fortune. Those gods are drawn from Chinese religions, Taoism, as well as Buddhism, from Shinto, Hinduism. So we have all different sources for these popular deities. Again, whatever works, that's good for them, right? A lot of these are things that you will see at both Buddhist temples and Shinto shrines pretty universally. And so that's another indication that for Japanese religion, there's not a strong separation between these different traditions. So, for example, fortune sticks, it's based on the Chinese notion of the I Ching. There are 64 possible variations, and so that's a form of divination from China. They also have these in China, though there's other ways that you can do divination. But this is something you also see in China, and you get a fortune, whether in a Buddhist temple or a Shinto shrine, and there's different theories about whether you should tie it up at the shrine to make sure that it comes true, or if it's a bad fortune that it doesn't come true, that you leave it there where the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Kami, whatever, will be able to help you out. Or you take it home if it's good and only leave it there if it's bad. There's all different versions of what you should do, and that too is just indicative of this sense that Japanese people don't feel that there is only one correct thing to do, and so depending on who you talk to, you might get different answers. Another thing that one will see very, very commonly wherever one goes, temples and shrines, is emma, these prayer plaques. You buy them at the shrine, so they usually, or a temple, in this case it's a shrine, but they will usually have some kind of image associated with that shrine. It's obviously a way for the temple or shrine to make money. And what you do is you write your plea on the back, and then you leave it there at the temple or shrine. They have a place for you to do that. Again, same basic idea that the deities will be able to help you to make sure that it comes out good. In the case of these kinds of prayers, they're usually very much this worldly prayers, and that is very common in Japan. They're interested in this worldly practical benefits. Somebody is sick, I hope that they get better. I'm looking for love. I've seen some of these that are, hoping to find some kind of love. In fact, there are some special Shinto shrines that focus on that issue precisely, and we'll see that in class when we talk about the PowerPoint. So asking for all kinds of practical favors. Omamori are essentially good luck charms. Also, in all Buddhist temples and all Shinto shrines, you're going to find these, and they will have a variety of different ones. Some are for academic success, some are for traffic safety, some are for general health, well-being in the home. These are the kinds of things, and so you will buy them. They don't really look much different if they're from a Shinto shrine or a Buddhist temple. They're pretty much just the same. And then here we have a little bit more of a focus on what happens in the home that is Shinto and what happens that's Buddhist. On the Shinto side, we have a kamidana. It is a small portable shrine that one usually has on a shelf somewhere, maybe up high on a wall in an important room in the house. And inside you put these fuda or ofuda, just a more polite way to say it. Traditionally, that would be a talisman from your local shrine, and at New Year's you'll go to the shrine and get a new one. Take the old one there, they can dispose of it properly, and you get a new one and put it in your home shrine. So the traditional idea was that the local kami, the tutelary kami that protects that region, will protect your home if you put this in the home. In more recent times, we get to travel more, and so, for example, this one is from the Ise Shrine. It's a fuda for Amaterasu, the sun goddess. And so, you could have different different protecting deities. But the idea is still the same. And so most homes, will still have something like this. If you go to Japan and you go to restaurants, you'll notice most restaurants will have a kamidana somewhere. You can see there's a mirror for Amaterasu and a place to put some sakaki branches that were mentioned in the myth that we talked about before, dishes of salt, because salt is a purifying agent, water, sake, so a bunch of offerings that you can make to keep the kami happy so that they'll protect you. On the other hand, we also will typically see in a home a butsudan. So most homes, especially the main family home, if you're young and you go off and live in an apartment, you're probably not going to have a butsudan. But especially where the older generation of your family is, and where people will all go back to for important Buddhist holidays, that there's a Buddhist altar. They look something like this. There's different versions, of course. And what goes inside will depend on what sect of Buddhism your family happens to practice. That there are many different forms of Buddhism. In China, they kind of all merge together into one, but in Japan, the different sects remain quite distinct. And so we have a bunch of different sects of Japan, though in practice, what they do is pretty similar. They have some different sutras that they focus on, the texts, and some different practices, like Zen Buddhism focusing more on meditation. Pure Land Buddhism is a more faith-based tradition, and there's many others. But so what goes inside will depend on the particular sect that you belong to. But the important thing about the Butsudan is not only a way to worship the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of your sect, but it will contain these, which are called ihai. And it has everything to do with the ancestor worship that we saw in China. So in China, they also will make these, right? And we saw how they will put them in a home altar or an ancestral shrine. In this case, though, this Chinese practice of ancestor worship has been adapted to the Japanese religious reality, which is this relationship between Buddhism and Shinto. And so what happens is that the prayers that one says in the Butsudan, or at the Butsudan, are meant to, over time, transform the deceased to take their tama, their Shinto kind of spiritual energy, and gradually lose the personality of the ancestor over time. The living forget the person, as you get into the next generation. So this is a process that takes usually about 33 years. And so gradually the memories of the individual kind of fade away, but the spiritual energy is concentrated and forms, kind of joins with the other members of the family who have gone in generations before. So after the process is finished, then you get rid of the actual ihai. You don't need it anymore. But what you end up with over many, many, many generations is an ujigami, a clan deity. We saw that from like Amaterasu is the ujigami for the imperial family. But everybody can have an ujigami in this sense, because the longer this process goes on, the more that spiritual energy joins to become a kind of depersonalized but sort of general sense of a tutelary kami that protects the family. And so that's what's going on in the Butsudan. Finally, one last example, and there's a good video you can click on and see what it looks like. Matsuri. These are local Shinto festivals. Every Shinto shrine will have some kind of a matsuri. They take place at different times, but there are certain ones that are very large. And so this is an opportunity for the community that is protected by a particular kami to bring that kami right out into the open. This is called a mikoshi, and the kami that dwells in the Shinto shrine is moved into this portable shrine, and then they carry it through the streets, and they drink a lot of sake, and they get boisterous and have a great time. And so that's a very, very good example of Japanese religion in practice. So altogether, we can reflect on this a little bit more in class, but the question I've asked you to think about here is to say something about that relationship between the deductive and inductive reasoning, and how does the inductive approach of the Japanese provide an opportunity for Japanese people to participate in such a wide variety of different practices. So I want you to think a little bit more about that, and we'll talk about this in class.